Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing another One Piece review. We are doing specifically the Thriller Bark arc. And we've got some interesting things to talk about. Now, going into the Thriller Bark arc, obviously I didn't know anything about it because I couldn't. But I'd seen some comments that were along the lines of, hey, when you're going into this one, don't really expect too much from it. Just like, it's just kind of like a fun ride. Don't really think too much of it. Don't really expect too much from it. And I did get that sentiment. I do understand, because I did get that from a few different people, and I understand where you're coming from. But I think that there was a lot of really interesting things that happened in this one, and I feel as if there was a hell of a lot of foreshadowing that happened in this one. Specifically, a lot of people talked about a lot of specific named places, and I'm like, as they were telling stories about these specific places, or they were, explaining certain things, took down the notes, and as I'm going through this review, I will, say, oh, in this part, this person brought up this, and I have a feeling that these people will be going there. Like, for example, I believe Zoro says something along the lines of, he wanted to thank the samurai for the sword, and he said that he came from Wano country, or Wano country, and I'm just like, there's no way Zoro's not going there. Like, it was just such a pointed way in which he said it, and I'm like, I have a very strong feeling that they will be going somewhere called Wano or Wano country. And another one that they briefly touched on, but they didn't really commit to anything, was when they found out that Ace is being held captive at, I believe it was called Impel Down or something. Impel Down. And I believe that they were reading about it in a newspaper that he was captured and he's now being held at Impel Down. And we find out about that piece of paper that Ace gave Luffy. That it's this special piece of paper that will be drawn to the other half, which we presume that Ace is still in possession of. So it's fairly safe to presume that although, Luffy said he wasn't really in any hurry to go and rescue Ace, and that, Ace was the kind of guy that wouldn't be held prisoner for very long, we do get the impression that they're going to watch that piece of paper slowly fade away to represent that the owner of the other half of the paper is slowly fading away, and that they will go to Impel Down to save Ace. So I do get the impression, I do understand what people were saying, that don't really expect too much from this, just kind of enjoy the ride, have fun with it, it's a fun little story, don't really expect too much from it. I do get where people were coming from when they said that, but I do feel as if there was a significant amount of foreshadowing in this one. Obviously, I couldn't have picked up on all the foreshadowing because I don't know what to look for yet, because I don't know what they're doing. But the other thing is, in terms of where this arc fits in with the story and where it fits in with the storytelling of One Piece as a whole, I think that it really did hit the mark in regards to what it was meant to do. This was another one of those kind of ease off the tension, kind of get people back into the flow of things kind of stories. And I mentioned this a few times in my other reviews, the one that was directly after Alabaster. I believe it was the beginning of Skypiea, where we run into all the monkeys, and it's just kind of a lot more lighthearted. Or even after we finished at Skypiea and we ended up at Long Ring, Long Land arc. In regards to the way that Oda is telling these stories, it does make sense that Thriller arc was kind of its own contained story that didn't really have a lot of stakes to it. For example, like I've said before, storytelling is done in a roller coaster, right? You have to apply the pressure, apply the tension, then ease it off a little, then apply it some more. And that way your audience doesn't get stuck in this moment of just holding their breath and feeling the tension, because if all you're doing is continually winding up the tension, you'll quickly find that your audience becomes too used to it, and you need to do bigger, bolder things to get the same payoff if you did up and down, add tension, release tension. And we've just come from the Enos Lobby, the post-Enos Lobby part, which was just so emotionally draining, and it was just so emotionally powerful, from everything that happened with Robin, saying goodbye to the ship, saying goodbye to the Going Merry, all of that stuff that happened, the post-Enos Lobby arc was only about 10 chapters long, so, we had so much tension, we had so much emotional drain, and there was, this real sense of, are these people really going to make it out of this? And the 10 chapters of post-Enos Lobby was crazy in itself, and it had so much information thrown at you that it didn't really give us the ease off of the tension that we needed, which is what this one did. So in terms of the overall storytelling of One Piece, not only does this fit the pattern of the way Oda is writing his stories, but it also fits the pattern of the way that a great story is written. So I guess overall, I'm just trying to get across the fact that, it didn't have these big everlasting consequences or whatever, or, it wasn't this emotionally draining masterpiece that you would say the Enos Lobby one was, but I feel as if it did fit quite well with the overarching One Piece story, and I did feel as if there was a lot of foreshadowing and good information that came across. In terms of other foreshadowing that I'm less sure of that will have a payoff in the future, towards the end, when they come across that big pirate treasure, Luffy does pick up an armband, and he puts it on, it looks like a leather armband, and Nami says something along the lines of, "It has no jewels in it, so you can keep it." I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be an enchanted armband, or if it's going to just be a new kind of accessory for Luffy, because as the story goes on, I imagine that they're going to pick up new scars, new tattoos, new accessories. So I don't know if that's going to have any kind of lasting significance to the story, or if it's just going to be from now on, Luffy will have a leather armband on. But it is something I noticed. Towards the end, they also mention the Pirate Empress Hancock. They don't really give they don't really give away much information about that. They don't really talk about it. I believe they are referencing the mermaids at the time, and they say, their beauty compares to the Pirate Empress Hancock. So I'd say at some point coming in the future, we're going to come across someone called the Pirate Empress Hancock. They talk about Dr. Vegas again. Or not Vegas, Vegapunk. They talk about Dr. Vegapunk again, and we find out that one of the warlords is an imperfect human weapon made by Dr. Vegapunk, and I feel as if my understanding of that moment was that he was a robot that was a weapon that was fed the human fruit, like how he keeps feeding inanimate weapons the certain fruits, such as the elephant sword or the dog cannon that we saw. So I have a feeling that we will run into Dr. Vegapunk, and we're probably going to run into him pretty soon. We've been seeing his effect on the world for a while now, and it would just make sense for it to happen. But enough of all that. Let's talk about the real big thing that happened in this one. Let's talk about Brooks. Let's talk about everything that happened with Brooks. Let's talk about the reveal that the Nakama that he left behind was Laboon, the whale. Now, I'm not going to lie, I did not expect Brooks to join the crew, right? When they first come across him and, they're on the ship and he's kind of singing, it was one of those things where it was okay, they've been looking for a musician for ages, right? They've got the ship right, they've got a cook, they've got a sniper, they've got a navigator, they've got, Zoro, the swordsman, and the Doctor and Chopper. Now, the one thing that Luffy's been asking for this whole time is a musician. So I did believe that the next person on the crew was going to be a musician, but I didn't think that we would get him so soon after we just got Frankie. I thought we would have got a bit more, of a Frankie story, maybe a bit more growth from Frankie before we got our next crew member. So when Luffy first immediately meets Brooks and is just oh, you can sing, you're a musician, come join my crew. And he's immediately asks Brooks to join his crew. I thought that was going to be more of a misdirection, and at the end, Brooks was going to be hey, even though we're technically only meant to go one way on the Grand Line, which I believe is the case, there are certain people that can go the other direction on the Grand Line, and I just so happen to have, this special ship and this special compass that will take me back to Reverse Mountain, and I can go and see Laboon. Now, Brooks was a really weird character for me because I didn't find him, overly engaging. I found him kind of, silly, and I didn't really get too connected to him until the moment where he talks to, I believe it's Frankie and Robin, and he explains that he's got that whale waiting for him, and, once we get that reveal, it's amazing how much more connected I felt to him and how much more I cared about his fight to get back his shadow, or his fight with his shadow in general. Because we already did get that emotional connection from Laboon at the very beginning of this saga. And even the little things like how he had like an afro and he didn't want to lose it because now that he was dead, he couldn't regrow any hair. And he needed Laboon to be able to see him and like recognize him. And although he wouldn't recognize him, he would recognize the afro. But anyway, I'm really interested to see in what direction they take Brooks. I'm guessing that Brooks is going to be more like the princess from the Alabaster arc. I'm guessing that he isn't going to be around forever. And, you know, if you're watching this and you've seen up to, you know, chapter 1040 or whatever they've got, and Brooks is still on the ship, you're probably like, this guy doesn't know anything. But to me, it feels like, you know, Brooks, we didn't really get a lot of information on him. You know, we got his sad backstory, so it is, you know, fitting that he does join the crew because he does have a personality and he does have a sad backstory, even though his personality is kind of like a mixture of Zoro and Sanji. Kind of like a perverted swordsman, I guess you could say. But like I said earlier, it just feels weird to have like just gotten Frankie and we haven't really gotten him to, you know, go out and like everyone's kind of had these like big story moments, right? Like, you know, we had Zoro's at Whiskey Peak, we had Nami's with Arlong Park, we had Usopp with the Enos Lobby, Chopper also with Enos Lobby. Also, Chopper had a pretty good story in this one. With the whole, like, meeting your heroes things and how, like, the heroes are never what they, you know, show when you can see them. It's like that old saying, never meet your heroes because they'll never live up to your expectations. And I thought that that was a really great theme with Chopper's story in this one because, you know, we did get to see him right at the beginning when he hears, like, Dr. Hogback's name and he's like, wow, that's, you know, Dr. Hogback. And we hear about the story, we hear about how much Chopper looks up to him. And then we slowly get more information and we see how Chopper's view of Dr. Hogback changes from like admiration and seeing him as a hero to like seeing him as a villain, and not only just seeing him as a bad person, but a bad person that he needs to stop because it goes against everything that Chopper believes. It goes against like the life and death and humanity that Chopper believes in. And I feel like that was a great human moment for Chopper. But one of the interesting things that happened towards the end of that story with Chopper and Hogback is when Chopper grabs Hogback and he says to Robin, like, hey, boost me up. And so Robin gives him a whole bunch of feet, I believe. And, you know, he goes right up into the air and he's about to do like a big, like, power slam, WWE, smash him into the ground and kill him, right? To me, that was a really interesting moment because not only was it like, I feel like this was all about Chopper understanding like the badness of human beings, but not only understanding it, but becoming one himself, to the point where he was about to kill one of his heroes who was now a villain, right? But in that moment when he's about to like slam him down onto the ground, I believe it's Oz comes through and like smashes the building, right? And so Chopper has to let go of Oz in order to save himself and to stop himself from getting hurt. And then Oz is on the ground, Hogback is on the ground, and he is there and he says to his assistant, you know, help me, I'm stuck under this rock, I can't move, Oz is about to step on me, help me. And then he starts like saying abusive things like she's, you know, useless and blah, 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 and she's a piece of crap that has to do everything he says, right? And this was a really interesting part for me because I don't know if they stopped Chopper from killing Hogback to preserve his humanity, or if they stopped Chopper from killing Hogback so that the assistant could regain her humanity by not helping him while Oz came and stepped on him and killed him, or a combination of both. So that was a really interesting moment for me, and I actually had to like stop and just kind of like think about it for a bit, because I was just like, was that, you know, because this was so much about Chopper and his humanity and like slowly understanding humans as he wants to become more human-like himself, and he gets put into this position where he can kill this person, and like to kill someone is like makes you lose your humanity, right? Like that's that's a theme. That's a theme in stories, books, movies, songs, whatever. You know, there's always this theme that to kill someone robs you of your humanity, robs you of a part of yourself. So it was one of those really interesting things where it was like, did they stop Chopper from killing this man to not make Chopper lose part of the humanity that he's trying so hard to understand and gain? Or was it more about the assistant and her regaining control of herself, regaining her power to, you know, say no and to do the things that she wants, to stand up to her abuser, I guess you could say. That was a really interesting theme for me, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that. Because my personal view is it was done more for the secretary. It was, you know, because you did get to, like, get a close-up of her face with her, like, past self kind of looking at herself as well. I believe it was, like, overtly done for the secretary, but it was covertly done for Chopper. It was more of one of those things like, you know, if you hadn't really been paying attention, you might not have seen it. You know, it was just one of those background things, but it was still quite important for his character. One of the things that I did really enjoy about this one, Thriller Bark arc, one of the things I did really enjoy was the different style of art, the different style of storytelling that happened in it. I enjoyed the more horror-themed, the more horror vibes, right? And the intelligent way that they went about this. And by that I mean they sent Usopp, Nami, and Chopper, right? The three people that I guess you could say are the weakest, or the most likely to get eaten by zombies, or the most likely to get hurt, or the least likely to get themselves out of a rough situation. However you want to look at it. They send the three most fragile people onto the island, and I feel as if that was done very specifically to build up that horror, to build up the scare factor of it. Especially because later on, when it's like Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Robin, Frankie, and they're just kind of like walking through and they come across, you know, the Cerebus, and they like tame the Cerebus instantly. You know, Luffy's like, sit, and the dog just like bites into him, and then he slams him into the wall and he's like, no, bad. And then, you know, they're riding the Cerebus, and then they get into the graveyard, and, you know, the zombie comes out of the ground, and Luffy just walks over and pushes it back into the ground. And that's exactly why they sent Robin, Chopper, and Usopp onto the island first, so they could have that fear factor, so they could have that horror factor, because, you know, as it was shown later on, when these incredibly strong, godlike people come through, it's just kind of a joke at that point, which it was funny when he just pushes that zombie back into the ground, or tries to tame the Cerebus. But in that first beginning part, when, you know, they come across the Cerebus and it's like quite scary, you know, there's the bat guy and he's hanging upside down and it's spooky, or when they're stuck in the graveyard and the zombies come, or when they go to the front door and the secretary's there and she's throwing plates at them. You know, all of that was done quite well, and all of that was done in quite a good spooky horror theme, right up until the point where the paintings reach out and try to grab them, right? And if I've got, God, I hope I saved the panel. If I've got the panel, I'm going to put it up here. And if I don't have the panel, I'm going to go hunting for it. Because it was like so spooky. I was not expecting it at all. It was like a great horror scene when like everything goes down and then like, you know, the painting is talking to him and is like, you're not going to escape, and reaches out for Chopper. That was so well done. It was like unexpected. It was spooky as hell, and I was like, good. That was really, really great. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed like the entire horror vibe that, like, at least the first half before Luffy and then came through. Like that first half with just like Usopp, Nami, and Chopper. I really enjoyed that entire horror vibe and the like real fear that it put into them. And, you know, like I didn't specifically feel fear, but I enjoyed that spooky factor while I was reading it. And it just made me think, like, if Oda, I've said this before, I've said this in a couple of things, like, especially when we first saw Robin and how she's, like, messing people up with, like, the hands and the stuff. I said it before, if Oda did a horror story, I would love to read it. I would love to read horror by this guy because he's fantastic. Alright, moving on, we got a couple of really interesting things that happened with Sanji in this one. Firstly, when we first come across Brooks, we see that he cannot see his reflection in the mirror. And when he finally explains why he can't see his reflection in the mirror, or why he doesn't have a shadow, he says something along the lines of, I have an existence that is rejected by the light. I can't be seen in photos, and I can't be seen in mirrors. Right, and why this is interesting is in the last arc, we saw that Sanji couldn't have his photo taken. It wasn't explicitly said that Sanji couldn't have his photo taken, but it was implied and it was left in a grey area. So it was interesting to me that Brooks specifically said, I cannot have my photo taken. When at really no other point in the One Piece story have we seen people taking photos, or have we seen, a camera or anything. I think the only time that we've seen a camera is when the Otter from Crocodile's crew, what were they called? The Undesirables or something? I believe the Otter had a camera and was taking photos of people. And I believe that is the only time we've seen a camera in One Piece. So it felt odd to me that Brooks would specifically say the words, I cannot be seen in photographs, especially in the arc directly after we hear about Sanji not being able to be seen in photographs, or like that grey area that it left us in. But secondarily to that, we also get the moment where Sanji finds out that Nami is in the middle of like a wedding ceremony to the leopard guy, right? And we see him explode with anger, and the way that he is drawn is like fire, and it seems like just like a funny stylistic choice. And we see in a couple of scenes that he's just kind of like running around, and he's like angry, and he's just like really intense, and like there's fire exploding around him. And it does just look like a stylistic choice, because like no one's really mentioning it. Everyone's just kind of talking about like, oh wow, he's wound up, or wow, he's mad or anything, until a zombie mentions that he literally has exploded with flames. He is literally on fire. So I don't know what's going on with Sanji right now, but we're kind of getting just like these like little puzzle pieces put into place that he can light himself on fire. He's got his fire kick thing, his black leg Sanji kick move, and he can't be seen in photos. And Brook has told us that it is, a life rejected of light. And it kind of makes me wonder if Sanji is some kind of like devil, if Sanji's some kind of like demon, or has got some kind of like something. Maybe it's like the same kind of chi thing that Zoro's got going on, but just channeled in a different way. Because just on that, when we do get the Zoro fight with the samurai, which I really loved, I thought that was really great. I really enjoy seeing like good Zoro fight scenes, and this one was a great Zoro fight scene. And I had one of my favorite tropes of all time. It had the honor among enemies trope, where they're like right at the end and they do their, they both do their special move, and like the samurai knows that he's been beaten and he's standing on top of there, and even though he's like a zombie, he can't feel pain and he's immortal and all that, he knows that he was beaten, and so he like drops the sword down to Zoro, who's like waiting below. And it was just one of those like really great honor among enemy kind of moments, which I do always appreciate, I do always love, and it's one of the things that I really enjoy about One Piece, because they do have a lot of those moments. But the point I'm getting at there is that Zoro lit the samurai on fire when he used his like dragon breath strike, or whatever it was called. The samurai literally caught flames. So it makes me wonder if Zoro and Sanji, because of their like clashing personalities and like the whole thing that is being built up between Zoro and Sanji, if they're going to have some kind of like either very similar, power level spike, they're going to have some kind of like, I don't know, they're both going to go to a monastery where they'll meditate and find out that their demon souls are brothers or something, you know what I mean? Or if they're going to find out that their abilities are actually the complete opposite, instead of being akin to each other, they're like yin and yang of each other. And that's why their personalities clash so much. So is it like a yin and yang and that's why they clash? Or is it like they're too similar and that's why they clash? I'm not quite sure. All I know is that they are giving us puzzle pieces and I cannot see the whole picture yet. But I'm excited to find out what the picture is. And while we're just talking about Zoro, I will bring up a prediction that I did get very wrong. I predicted that Zoro's melted sword, because he was still running around with 3 swords inside of his waistband or whatever, I predicted that he would eventually be able to like summon a chi sword. It would be like a lightsaber or something. But I did get that prediction wrong, because he did get the new super incredible mega samurai sword from this one. I believe it was called like Clear Autumn Wind or Clear Autumn Pond or something. It looks super cool, and like apparently it's the best sword he has. It has like a super mega legendary hardness to it. I am glad to see Zoro back with 3 swords, even though I was wrong about that prediction. This story did have a lot of like really weird stuff in it, just like weird stuff. And it doesn't surprise me that it's not like people's favorite one. You know what? I'd love to know like where would Thriller Bark, you know, top, middle, low, like where would it sit in regards to like your favorite arcs or whatever. I did like it because it was, you know, that horror theme, and you know, I did quite like that horror theme, and it did have some really interesting points, and it did have some good foreshadowing in it. But there was a lot of just like really weird stuff that happened in it, like when Nami's showering and like the invisible guy is in there, and then he like knocks her out and tries to like force her to marry him. That was all weird. And then like Lola, the you know, hippo lady, comes through and is like continually trying to propose to these people, and it's like trying to force this guy to marry her. And, you know, there was just like a few other things like that, and it was just like this kind of ongoing theme with it, and it was a little weird. It was just a bit like, you know, I get it, but it is kind of weird. Like how Dr. Hogback is like, you know, they don't specifically say that he's like a necrophiliac, but like, I mean, you know, that is heavily implied. One of the other things they also say is that, you know, they get a new body, and it came from Wano country, so I believe that we will also go there. I believe that they said that's where Oz was from, and he like froze to death, so I have a feeling that we will go to Wano country and it will be very cold. Alright, let's talk about Usopp for a moment, because Usopp had a really interesting part in this story, in that he was immune to the ghosts of the Ghost Lady, because he was considered always being negative. He had his like Hulk moment where, you know, they're like, Hulk, how do you control your anger? And he goes, that's my secret. I'm always angry. And he had one of those moments where he's like, that's my secret. I'm always down. I'm always depressed, or whatever it is specifically that he said. And it was like a really great moment. It was like really clever for them to recontextualize all of Usopp's like, you know, pessimism, or, you know, fatalistic views or anything like that, or, you know, whenever he's down or depressed, or like, guys, we shouldn't do this, guys, don't go there, don't do this. His like negative energy, it was a great way to like recontextualize all of that negative energy that he showed, or, you know, intelligence and like will to just survive, as a power instead of as a weakness. It was like great to see that moment. And the other big thing that I thought was really clever was how they have started to incorporate Usopp's ability to lie into his fighting abilities and into his abilities to win. Like, for example, when he does find that the woman is like on her bed and she's kind of in like a meditative state and has released her soul from her body to like go through the walls and throw ghosts at Usopp and all of that. He, you know, he says something like, exploding star, and he like lets go of his slingshot and like shoots it, and the ghost says something along the lines of, you missed, and your star didn't explode, it backfired, it fizzled out or whatever. But in reality, Usopp lied about saying exploding star and instead shot like a glue at her, so when she went back into her body to fight Usopp or to get out of there or whichever, she found that she was stuck to the wall. And that's when Usopp shot like bowls of cockroaches at her and pulled out his big 10-ton balloon hammer. And it was just one of those like really silly things, but it was also like quite clever in the way that they are incorporating Usopp's ability to lie in his ability to win his fights. Because Usopp's strengths do not lie in his physical capabilities, they lie in his ability to lie. No, they rely on his intelligence. That's where Usopp gets his strength from. So it's really great, and it's really cleverly done to see him using his intelligence in different ways in these fights. But anyway, all in all, I'm going to say that I did quite enjoy Thriller Bark. I enjoyed the horror, I enjoyed the atmosphere. The fight scenes were all really good, like in terms of just like the action sequences, the speed in which they're happening, the understandability of it. That was one of my big issues that I had at the beginning of this series. I found that some of the fight scenes got lost. I found that like some of them, they were either too slow, or they were kind of boring, or they, you know, had too much going on and you couldn't really understand exactly what was going on. But as the series is progressing, they are becoming more interesting, they are becoming like faster paced, they are becoming clearer to see exactly what is going on. And as a fan of, any author's work, specifically I'm a fan of Oda's work right now, it is so great to watch them evolve and only become better at what they're doing. And I definitely can see Oda improving in both his storytelling, his characterization, his fight scenes, his art style, everything. I feel as if, just reading this one, I can feel how much he's improved as not only an author, but an artist, and it's something that I do really appreciate. There was also a lot of really just kind of silly slapstick humor in this one, which is something that I did appreciate because, as I said at the beginning of this video, the last couple of arcs were so emotionally intense. So it was nice to just kind of have silly slapstick, Luffy trying to shake hands with the Cerebus or pushing a zombie back in the thing, or when they bring Oz to life and they just can't control him and he's just running around being a menace, just yanking on chains, just diverting the boat from the fog into the sunlight or whatever. There was just all these kind of little funny joke moments that really did land and really did come across well, that just to bring up the live action One Piece that's going to be coming out, I have a feeling that they're really going to struggle to try and capture the humor in One Piece. But God, if they can get it right, if they can capture the humor and the feelings and the vibes of One Piece, they will have an absolute masterpiece on their hand. They would fucking outshine Game of Thrones by a million miles because the source material is so much better. They just have to try their best to capture that magic, and it's going to be a difficult task, but people are on board with the casting that they've got. People are happy with the casting, I believe, from what I've heard. I haven't heard anyone not like the casting so far, but if they can nail the magic of the One Piece story, they will just absolutely be head and shoulders above any other adaptation that we've had in the last 10 years. I would say that, The Lord of the Rings would probably still beat a One Piece adaptation. I know, I'm just saying, we gotta see. If you disagree with me on that, Google Ride of the Rohirrim and just remember how great that scene is. Alright, now, just on a personal note, I want to mention that I am flying back to Australia in the next week. I do not have to do 2 weeks of quarantine, which is kind of a bummer because I was really looking forward to doing 2 weeks of quarantine because I did just want to load up. I wanted to probably read, the next 10 chapters of One Piece and do all my videos and load up and get all that under my belt. Especially so I could do the live streams and have I'm, video-wise up to Thriller Bark, but I'm actually up to blah blah, so we can talk about up to blah blah now. But the real point I'm trying to make here is that once I get back to Australia, I should have more stable internet, so I should be able to more reliably upload these videos at a set time each week. Plus, the job I'm going to will also be providing me more free time so I can do these reviews better. Because at the moment, sometimes I do these reviews at 2 a.m. after I've finished a 10-hour shift, right? This week I just did, or this past fortnight, I did 13 days in a row, and this is my 1 day off. But this next job that I'm going into, I am doing 5 days a week. There's no travel time. I'm living where I work. So I'm going to have a lot more time. I'm going to have a lot more ability to put some time and effort into this channel. I'm just saying, thank you everyone for sticking around and supporting me this long. I do appreciate it. It has been rough this past couple of months for me, but I am moving somewhere that will give me better work-life balance. It will give me more free time to put a lot more effort into these videos. It'll give me a lot more free time to do more live streams as well. I want to do them once a week. If I could live stream every Saturday, that would be perfect for me. Anyway, enough of that. You probably don't want to hear about my life story. I'm just saying that I should be able to be more consistent and put more time and effort and love and care into these videos that I'm making. So I appreciate you sticking with me all the way up through, these hard times that I've had the past few months, where I was recording videos in my car and stuff. I have bright sunny days on the horizon. Thank you very much for watching all this way. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment down below. I believe we're going to Fishman Island next, so I'll see you next week, and as always, thank you very much.